Holy shit, is that Doug? Shout out to my boy Alternated. Alright, Doug is back, and this time we are doing grinds, transfers, and slides. Before we get carried away, I'll just say nothing in this video was intentionally put in the game, so understandably some of this shit is weird and janky. There's also lots of BMX terms I'm probably going to get wrong in this video, but I don't really care. This video will include hipster slide, reverse hipster slide, front slide, crank, handlebar, and arse grinds, cog slide, reverse cog slide, and frame slide, as well as rail transfers for each type. I've decided to condense all these things into one video because a lot of them are similar or related in some way. Seeing as there's lots of things to cover, I'll try to condense this video the best I can while keeping lots of detail. Here are my keybinds, and let's get started with the different ways to grind. If you're watching this video, you've probably been told at some point the racetrack is a great place to practice grinds. My response to that is, shut your stupid. I don't know if it's because I'm in Rockstar Creator or what, but these Adam Eve ass fat as hell rails are comparable to training wheels. But hey, I guess if you're into that sort of thing, then go ahead. But just so you know, I haven't seen any other rails in the game so damn sticky in my life. But seriously, this sort of thing might be good for getting used to the movement, but I haven't seen any other rails in the game behave like this. So for that reason, most of this video won't be at this spot. Anyway, we'll start with the crank grind. It's simple. Jump, turn sideways, and then lean backwards or forwards to stay balanced. Generally, you want to keep the rail contacting the crank or just in front of it. If your back wheel contacts the rail, 9 times out of 10 it's GG, so try staying in the middle to front area. Then you have the handlebar grind. Basically just jump face first into the rail roughly at this angle, and most of the time you will stick relatively well. Once you're on nicely, the only thing that can stop you would be a lack of speed, leaning too far forward, and bumps or obstructions on the rail. Moving on to the arse grind, which you can probably see there are some similarities to the handlebar grind, only there is some extra shit you need to be careful of. Notably, arse grinds rarely work on skinny rails like this one. To prevent this, most arse grinds are used on thicker rails or walls. Depending on the wall, arse grinds have a harder time sticking onto surfaces and often end up wandering to the edge. And just like the handlebar grind, speed, leaning back, and janky surface can often end the grind. Alright, now we'll go through each of the grind varieties and show different ways to transfer off them. Starting with the crank, all you basically need to do is slowly approach the rail with your back wheel and jump once your wheel gains traction. I personally just spam the shit out of the jump button because it can be very unpredictable when your wheel suddenly decides it wants to have traction. Another way is to drop your back wheel and then turn and jump when your front wheel gains traction on top of the rail. This sort of transfer rarely works on thinner rails, but works well on wider ones. Moving on to the handlebar grind, which has far more options to work with. The simplest option would be handlebar transfer to crank. The main component of this sort of grind is how the BMX latches onto the rail. This is purely my speculation, but I think the hitbox looks something like this. When properly attached to the rail, the hitbox acts as a hook, keeping you attached while you spin around. When improperly attached, you will likely just spin on the rail like this and fail the transfer. Here is the breakdown. You want to have this angle on the rail to start. Then press A or D and W slightly off timed, then hold W until you swing around to the top of the rail. You might be asking yourself, how in God's name does leaning forward result in you actually going backwards? Well, it's all to do with the position and angle of your BMX. To demonstrate what I mean, I've returned to GTA Heaven. You may already know this, but being in this leant over position and pressing W or S causes your BMX to rotate in a circle. So leaning forward in this slanted position on the rail results in you pulling yourself up it, if that makes any sense. In a similar sort of way, you could also attempt jumping when your back wheel contacts the rail and turning onto your crank. Everything I've just mentioned about this transfer could also be done in reverse. Notably, if you're planning to jump on the rail, the reverse method often results in a better jump overall compared to the forward method. That being said, everything just depends on what you're trying to accomplish with your surroundings. As for arse grind transfers, I can straight away tell you it's nearly identical to handlebar grinds. To showcase the transfer, I've chosen this specific spot that I know of because for whatever reason, the arse grind latches really well onto the hitbox of the wall, unlike a lot of other walls. So just like before, aim for a similar position to this one, turn and lean back with slightly offset timing. Once you get to about here, press W a little and bring your front wheel down onto the surface. You then just need a forward brake and jump in the opposite backward diagonal direction, kinda like you're doing a frame bounce only backwards instead of forwards. This method is basically the same going forward, only you don't need to hold the front brake when jumping. Alright, holy shit, I hope your brain hasn't melted yet because we're doing slides now. Here are all the basic slides done on flat ground. We have the hipster slide, reverse hipster slide, and I don't know what this one's called, so I'm gonna just call it a nose slide. Despite their variations, all these slides rely on one common thing, which is passing the lean threshold. Allow me to explain. When leaning back on a BMX, there is a certain point which the BMX starts fundamentally behaving differently. And there it is. Did you see it? That sudden jerk of the player model indicates your BMX is now turning on a different axis. As you can see, despite me leaning back considerably, when I turn sideways without hitting the backward threshold, my BMX doesn't roll like before. But now, when you see the player's head jerk back, now I roll. When doing any type of slide, you must just hit this threshold, enough to start rolling, but not too much to where your player hitbox hits the ground before your BMX does. This plays directly hand in hand with a cog slide, which is more or less a hipster slide, only completely flat. And the same thing applies for its reverse counterparts. Only with a cog slide, you need to get into this position, then lean forward to bring your player hitbox further away from the surface. Beyond that, it mostly comes down to balance, only it's a lot harder in comparison to something like a crank grind. Although there is a sweet spot that can keep you on safely, it's usually difficult to hit perfectly. So what tends to happen is relying on balance. The thing is, it kinda preys on your downfall. Have a look at this clip. You may have thought, bro, turn that way to balance back onto the wall. But to what avail? If I turn this way to balance back onto the wall, my wheel in return will move this way, causing me to fall anyway. So balancing becomes far more challenging because instead of just left and right, 3 factors become relevant. Leaning back and forward, side to side, and depending on how far you are past your threshold, the slope of your BMX's hitbox. I already know you're scratching your head right now, but fear not, I have some very expensive software to help explain. Think of your BMX hitbox as a plate like this. Depending on how far you lean back initially, once you roll over and lean forward, your BMX's hitbox could end up sliding across the wall like this, which is still manageable, but it just adds another layer of unpredictability. So it might look like you're completely flat on the wall, but your BMX's hitbox could be slightly slanted and cause you to slide off eventually. And of course, none of this shit about balancing really matters if you just hit the sweet spot and slide along without a care in the world. Now imagine all I just explained to you, but do it in reverse. Honestly, it really isn't that much harder once you get the hang of it, but it still adds a layer of difficulty. The entry for this is also a bit simpler. You basically just lean forward, not all the way, and then diagonal turn past the threshold and then counter steer the momentum. And then you got your fork slide or frame slide. This thing kinda sucks ass. I find it next to impossible to steer and it has a really weird hitbox at the front. You can also do this other slide on the front, but honestly, it's so demonic this clip is all you're gonna get. Honorable mentions! Rail spin! Holy shit, look at that boy spin. Wall ride to cog transfer. Wow, that's so epic. And side grinds. You may remember me saying earlier that you cannot arse grind on skinny rails. Well, it turns out you can, just very, very briefly during a spin. This is something that just kinda comes to you after you get down the arse and handlebar transfers. It's kinda like you cancel the transfer to crank midway through and just keep spinning while balancing your backwards and forwards leaning. As for the wall ride to cog transfer, you basically just need to approach the edge slowly while holding back and you're just put into perfect position. Side grinds rely just barely being on a tiny hitbox on the side of your bike. There isn't a whole lot you can do during this grind, so it doesn't really get used that often. And there you have it. That's all the things I could think of about grinds, slides and transfers at 5 in the morning. I hope it was worth it. Thank you.